confidence. Tony in New York. You're on with Jenna and Matt. How are you?
How you doing, Miss Jenna, Mr. Matt?
Pretty good.
Glad to hear it. So, I don't know if you need to see what the course can put down for me, but I believe that there is a God, but I don't believe in conventional religion. I just believe that He communicates with us in a different way than we don't really perceive as regular communication, I guess.
Are you on a cell phone?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, that's so much clearer. It's like you had the microphone like in your mouth for a second and now it's clear. So I couldn't quite understand what you said. You don't believe in a conventional God, but you believe in a God that what?
I don't believe in conventional religion, but I do believe in God, ultimately.
Okay.
I do believe that there is an ultimate creator.
Okay.
But I believe that He uses math to, like, communicate with us. That's
Math? M-A-T-H, math?
Yeah, M-A-T-H.
Okay.
Because it's the only thing that ends up being true. Like, I grew up Catholic, just to give you some background.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized, like, Catholicism is kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So I converted to Christianity. And then I really started reading the Bible. And then I realized, well, the Bible itself is just kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So far, you're on the same path that I was.
But ultimately, I believe that there is something that made us and put us here.
Why?
I just don't believe He cares about us in general because there's a bigger, like, there's a whole planet to be concerned about, and we're just a small spectrum of the bigger thing. So I believe it's all about the numbers because the only thing that's really true and accurate is 2 + 2. Because if we weren't able to use that, we wouldn't be able to get into space. You know what I mean?
So let's try and sort this out. So you believe in a God. What do you know about that God? What are its characteristics or properties?
Well, okay. What I believe is that the characteristics of God would be He would be ever-knowing, or all-knowing, and ever-present. Right?
Why would you believe that there's anything that fits that description?
All right, because again, I look at this as from a scientific point of view. All right, so science would say that if you look at an artist drawing a picture, if the picture were alive, the picture wouldn't be able to see the artist, right? If the picture were alive,
I don't. If the picture were alive, I don't know why it wouldn't be able to see the artist.
Because of it's in 2 dimensions, and the artist would be in 3 dimensions. It's stuck on that paper.
Oh,
Okay.
Okay. So
you're thinking it's just outside of our dimension, so we just can't sense it.
Correct. However, the artist can interact with that second dimension, and God's way of interacting with us would be through math, because it's the only thing that communicates with every single dimension.
So what does He communicate to us with math?
I don't believe He really cares about us in general. I believe it's just about the numbers, like statistics, ratios.
okay. So you believe in a God that
Yes.
created us, that we cannot detect, and that doesn't care about us. If we can't if we can't detect it, how could you ever be rationally justified in believing that it exists?
Looking around at the bigger picture, I mean, it's hard to think that. Again, I understand this goes back to the watchmaker fallacy, but it's difficult to look at this marble and say that it wasn't put here for a reason, and all the ratios.
No, it's not that difficult. I can look at this marble that we live on, and I can be fine with the notion that it wasn't intentionally put here for a reason.
But I understand why it's difficult. I thought it was difficult too because it just made me feel more comfortable.
Well, I understand how it can feel difficult.
Yeah.
But here,
just try thinking about it.
The question I'm getting to is, you're saying that you believe in something that you can't detect, and yet you're telling me about its properties. You suspect that it doesn't care about us, or you suspect that it's trying to communicate with through math, but then maybe it's not trying to communicate with us at all. If you ultimately believe in a God that is undetectable and indifferent, how is the God you believe in, how is that God's existence in any way different from your perspective than its non-existence?
All right. I get what you're saying. But, all right, me being the painting, looking, trying to see my artist and not being able to doesn't mean I shouldn't try to understand what my artist is trying to explain through me.
Why?
So, but you're assuming that there's an artist, and so when we look at, for example,
Yes.
You don't just get to assume that, because when we look at biology, we have physics, chemistry that lead to biology that explain the origins of everything in the universe. We understand how planets form. We understand how stars form. We don't necessarily know how the universe began, but we have some models about those sorts of things, and none of them require or depend on an appeal to an artist.
Yes, that's true, but all those things can be broken down by math.
Yes, but are you saying math is God?
Ultimately, I like to think that's the way he communicates. That's the thing he used to design the universe.
If it's what you like to think, isn't that different from whether or not you have good reason to think it's true?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last part. If it's what I like to think, what?
You say you like to think that this is how God communicates, but if it's not, how do you demonstrate that it's true, that what you think is correct?
Because math is the only thing that hasn't lied. I mean, languages lie. Everything else lies.
But
Wait,
Everything you present to people lie, except for math.
I don't know.
Okay, so the fact that math is true, how does that prove that God is true?
Because that would ultimately have to be somebody would have to put that there.
No, what? So you think somebody could put math there? Math is an abstraction. Math is
I understand it's something we interpret.
it's not
numbers.
like one exists or four exists or addition exists. These are abstractions. These aren't things that exist. Math is the most pure way that we can describe the universe. But nobody had to invent math. Or, well, we discovered these truths, identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle, and then math is basically set theory of how we're going to combine those things. And yes, I would agree with you that math is the closest thing to truth that we're likely to have. But what you're saying is there could not be math unless there was a God. And I don't know how you make that jump.
Because it's illogical. I mean,
No, what's illogical? What's illogical is to assert that something is contingent upon a God without being able to demonstrate that it's contingent upon a God. That's illogical.
I get what you're saying. It doesn't exactly prove the existence of God, but I mean, it's like sentences. I mean, eventually, you don't understand the concept of maybe 2 + 2 initially, but that concept got us to build spaceships. It got us to a space station.
Wait, so math is pretty cool, but what does that have to do with a God?
And isn't language pretty cool too? I mean, aren't we essentially using language right now and not actually using math?
I want to know what God's communicating with math. He said it's the only thing that he uses to communicate with us. I want to know what he's communicating with it.
Betterment, I would think, because the more formulas we find out, the more advanced the further we get to advance.
He's telling us formulas?
So.
Well, formulas are what's helping us have further doubt.
Those are the things that we are discovering. These are truths about the universe that we are discovering. It's not like there's a God that is leading us to, a solution for Fermat's last theorem.
Like math shows us how things that that are actually real are. Like, if there's one person there, one person here, that's two. But where's God?
I would imagine that, not so much in the one person here, one person there, but when the problems come about, we use math to make houses. We use math to make medicine.
Right, but that's to
Diseases as well,
describe
but
reality. It's just describing what we can already see, what we can already touch, it's just, I don't understand how you connect that to God.
But we may or may not use math to create art. We can, but we don't necessarily need to rely on mathematics to create art, and yet art inspires and beautifies our world. And it's true that we appreciate that. So there are things that are true that aren't, you may be able to use math to describe it, but even if you did that, it doesn't mean there's a God who needed to create math or use math to tell us about the world. Math is what we use to best describe the world.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What if there wasn't a God?
If there wasn't a God, I would. This is only just assuming and imagining. I would think there would be certain truths.
Why?
Because it's just hard for me to consider that this is all by chance.
I completely understand, and you're being really honest, and I really, really appreciate that. And it sounds like you're having a really hard time, so just try to take a deep breath and just take your time. There's no rush, okay? Just think on it. If
everything, and this is directly spinning off what Jenna just asked, let's assume that there isn't a God, that there's nobody guiding the process or anything else, that the universe is as it appears, a universe with physical interactions and physical properties. What would that change about your life? Aren't the things that you love still the things that you love? Aren't the things that are beautiful to you still beautiful to you? Isn't 2 + 2 still equal to 4? Even if there's nobody guiding it.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's the thing Jenna's asking, and it was the same thing that I was asking before, in the sense that there's nothing about this universe that necessitates a God. And so what you seem to be doing is saying, oh, it's just difficult to understand how all of this could have happened by accident. But by accident is a particular phrasing that I find incredibly poisonous, because I'm not here by accident. The earth is not here by accident. We are both the natural results of physical processes. So when you set this up, you set up a false dichotomy. You say either everything happens by accident, or there's somebody governing and guiding all of it. When the evidence shows that the physical processes, the physical forces within the universe are the things that are determining how things interact, but not like there's a plan in place. And so you have the strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force, gravity, et cetera. And maybe we've just found another one, who knows? But it seems to be that what happened is somebody convinced you that it's either all just randomly, accidentally happening, or something is governing it. And I would say that, yes, something is governing it, the laws of physics, because physics is everything. There's no chemistry without physics. And you want to get back to that math is the foundation of it. Math is the abstraction we use to describe physics and everything else. And so we're not going to beat you up. I mean, if you're going to sit around and go, well, I just believe in a God that I can't detect, that doesn't interact in any way, that may or may not be communicating with us, the only thing I'll say is, you don't seem to really have a good reason to believe in that God, but I'm not convinced that it's doing you much harm. And it may be there to alleviate the stress of having to recognize that maybe there's nobody steering this. Maybe it is just physical interactions, because that can be uncomfortable.
How would you feel if you didn't think there was a God? If you looked and kept looking, and a year from now you find out that you don't find any reason to believe that there's any God? What would that mean for you?
Well, it's funny because I've been listening to you guys and talk to you guys for like a year now. And when people ask me, I do tell them that I'm atheist, because I have trouble believing in, like I said, conventional gods, because everybody believes in some form of a book God. Mm-hmm. So, but like personally, I I'm trying to let go of the concept of God. This whole concept of God is in the numbers and everything like that. It was one day I was just thinking about it, and I was like, if there was anything that communicated us, it would be the truth of math. And I would think, if anything, that would be God-given. But that's why I reached out to you guys, because I wanted to let go of this idea.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with math being the best thing we can to describe reality. It seems to violate Occam's razor to go a step further and say, therefore, math has to be the language of God. But I will tell you that you are not alone, because the statement that you made is almost a modern direct quote from what Sir Isaac Newton wrote. And I would recommend, and I think it's on YouTube, it's one of my favorite videos of all time. It's a Disney production, and it's called Donald in Math Magic Land. It's less than a half. Please go watch it. Everybody should watch this thing. I watched this when I was a kid. It is incredibly impactful. It goes through and it shows phi and the golden spiral and the golden ratio, and then it shows billiards and the math behind all that, and music and the math behind that, and how math is there. And then it ends, or maybe it begins, but I'm pretty sure it ends with a quote from Sir Isaac Newton that mathematics is the language with which God has written the universe. And as a metaphor, it's beautiful. As a way to understand the impact of math on describing the universe, it is beautiful. But if somebody were to look at that quote and say, wow, math proves there's a God, they have fundamentally misunderstood how we would go about proving something. It's not that a God was required for there to be mathematics. It's that Sir Isaac Newton and you, so you're in good company, look at the math that describes the universe and say, wow, this seems like it could be the sort of thing with which a God could have painted the universe that we're in. And that puts math in the state of being prescriptive, when I view math as a descriptive abstraction. And so I don't need to go the extra step. But if you just want to do it as a metaphor, maybe you're not comfortable with the atheist label, maybe you don't want to get into arguments and debates with somebody, and you want to do the, God is math, or math is God, or, it's not the worst idea anybody's ever had until you try to argue that there's an actual thinking agent entity behind it. And now you've gone a step beyond what Occam's razor would allow.
Do you have people to talk to about this, like to bounce ideas off of and ask questions, other than us?
No. My girlfriend, that's about it.
You might want to try the ACA Discord, because there may be people in there that want to have those conversations. We may or may not be doing something with the Discord after the show's over. I'm waiting to hear. But on that note, we're over time, so I want to let you go, Tony. Okay. But by all means, find somebody to reach out to, whether it's the Discord, whether it's a local skeptic group. Obviously, I don't know whether Recovering from Religion would necessarily dig in on this here, but philosophy groups in your area, hit up the local university and see if there's a philosophy club or a skeptics drinking or non-drinking, if drinking is an issue, drinking skeptically, stuff like that. But yeah, you're not alone. You're in good company. It's just that I don't know how you can realistically get from, I think there is a God who's communicating with mathematics, and how it would perhaps just be much better to say, isn't this universe amazing, and aren't we learning a lot about it because of math? But also, go watch Donald in Math Magic Land.
You're doing good. You're asking the right questions.
It's an important... Yeah, go ahead.
No, I didn't hear exactly what Jenna said.
Oh, I said you're doing really good. You're asking the right questions.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Tony.
And I will definitely check out Donald in Mathematics, because I'm sure that will help a lot.
Math Magic Land, not Mathematics Land. Yeah, because you'll get it. Math Magic Land. It's so there were a handful of things that I've seen in my life that were groundbreaking in opening my mind up to certain things. Donald in Math Magic Land was the first time I saw something where I was like, whoa. I did not watch the original Cosmos when it first came out. I was a little too young for it. I will agree that it's incredible, it is important and worth watching. But the work of James Burke in both The Day the Universe Changed and Connections, the first series, That was wow. And these things build on each other. And then there's a number of, people ask, oh, can you recommend a book? Yeah, and the first book I always recommend is Innumeracy by John Allen Paulus, which has nothing to do with religion. It has to do with how bad we are at math and how we lie with statistics. And all of those things were incredible eye-opening. So if you watch Donald in Math Magic Land, Connections, The Day the Universe Changed, and read Innumeracy, and then read any religious text you want, and don't wind up an atheist, I don't know what to tell you.
The inexplicable universe.
There you go.